This is the true story about two sisters. They say the dead never truly leave us. But what if they try to call you? A dark, stormy night. Lightning flickers outside. The protagonist, Lila, sits alone in her dimly lit apartment, scrolling through her phone. Lila jumps as her phone suddenly buzzes. A call from Amber, her sister, but Amber has been dead for 3 years. Narrator: she thought it was some sick prank. She was dead wrong. Lila hesitates, then answers. The line crackles with static. Amber whispering, "Lila, help me. It's dark, so dark." Lila's breath catches. She grips the phone tighter. "Lila, who is this? This isn't funny." "Amber, it's me. I don't have much time. You have to find me before it's too late." The call abruptly cuts off. The screen goes black. No call log. No evidence it ever happened. Determined to prove she isn't crazy, Lila visits their childhood home, now abandoned. Inside, dust clings to forgotten memories. The air is thick with decay. She follows faint whispers, leading to the basement. The door creaks open, revealing a staircase descending into darkness. Sometimes the past refuses to stay buried. Deep underground, Lila finds a hidden door. Inside, a room with a rusted hospital bed. Chains on the walls. A single flickering bulb. And something worse, an old videotape playing on loop. The footage shows Amber, trapped, screaming into the camera. Amber on video: "Lila, I never died. They took me. You have to." The video cuts out. A low growl echoes behind Lila. She turns, eyes widening in terror. Narrator: she came looking for answers, but found something waiting for her instead. The screen glitches. A deafening scream. Static. Then silence. Lila stumbles backward, heart pounding. The room shakes as shadows slither along the walls. A guttural voice whispers her name. Mysterious voice. "You shouldn't have come." Suddenly, hands, cold, decayed, grab Lila from behind. She fights, but something drags her deeper into the darkness. She sees something, knows someone. Amber, pale, gaunt, her eyes hollow. "Amber, they don't let me leave, Lila. And now neither will you." A flash of movement. A monstrous figure looms over them, its mouth stretching open, revealing endless void. Lila screams, but it's swallowed by the suffocating dark. She claws at the floor, trying to escape, but the shadows consume her. Her vision distorts, and the last thing she sees is Amber's lifeless smile as she whispers, "Amber, we're together now. Forever." A new phone buzzes in another room. A new name on the screen. Lila. A hand too long, too thin, slowly reaches for it. The camera pans up, revealing a grotesquely twisted version of Lila, her face stretched in an unnatural grin. Would you answer? Claire had always dreamed of living in a quiet suburban neighborhood. After years of city life, she finally found a peaceful, tree-lined street that seemed perfect, a place where she could settle down and build a new life. The homes were charming, each with its own distinct character. The neighbors, as welcoming as could be, greeted her warmly when she moved in. Everything seemed idyllic, almost too perfect. But it didn't take long for Claire to start noticing something strange. At first, it was little things. One neighbor, the elderly Mrs. Whitaker, had always been out in her front yard, tending to her roses. But then she stopped appearing. Her house remained quiet, the once vibrant garden now overgrown. Claire thought maybe Mrs. Whitaker was just on vacation or had moved to a nursing home. But when the days turned into weeks and there was still no sign of her, Claire grew concerned. The house remained as still as a tomb, and the yard grew wild with neglect. Next, it was the Johnsons, a young couple who had always been so friendly. Their car was parked in the driveway every night, but the garage door remained closed, and the lights inside their house never flickered on. Claire hadn't seen them in days. Then one morning, she noticed the car was gone. The garage was open, but the house was eerily quiet. She decided to stop by to check on them, but when she knocked on their door, no one answered. She peeked through the window and saw nothing but empty rooms. It was as if they had vanished overnight. Now, Claire was starting to feel the chill in the air. More and more houses along her street were showing signs of abandonment. One by one, families disappeared, their homes left behind, empty and silent. The houses stood in stark contrast to the lively neighborhood Claire had first moved into. There were no for sale signs, no moving trucks, no goodbyes, just vacant homes with the remnants of lives once lived inside. Feeling a deep sense of unease, Claire decided to investigate. She began speaking to the few neighbors who were still around, but they all seemed distant, hesitant to talk about the disappearances. Every conversation left her with more questions than answers. There was no one to turn to for help. The few neighbors left were strangely evasive, speaking in hushed tones as if afraid of being overheard. One night, unable to sleep, Claire ventured out for a late-night walk. The street was covered in an unnatural silence, the air thick with a heaviness she couldn't explain. As she passed by the Whitakers' house, she noticed something odd. There, in the darkened window, she saw a shadow. It wasn't Mrs. Whitaker, and it wasn't anyone she recognized. The figure seemed to be watching her, unmoving, as though waiting for her to make her next move. She hurried back home, her heart racing, but as she passed by another house, one that had been empty for weeks now, she saw another shadow, just like the first. It was lurking in the window, its shape vague, yet unmistakably present. The next day, Claire tried to dig deeper. She went to the local library, hoping to uncover some history of the neighborhood, some connection between these disappearances. What she found shocked her. The street had been built on an ancient piece of land, one that had a dark history. The homes were not just ordinary houses. They were part of an old, forgotten ritual, a curse that had been passed down through generations. The people who lived in these houses were not truly living at all. They were simply vessels, absorbed by an otherworldly entity that resided beneath the neighborhood, in the very soil it was built upon. The curse had begun long ago, when the first settlers arrived and made a pact with a dark force. Over the decades, the entity grew stronger, and with each new family that moved in, it fed on their essence, their very souls. The houses were not homes, they were traps. Every family, every person who moved and became another part of the entity's collection. The neighbors who vanished weren't gone. They had been absorbed, their souls twisted and consumed by the entity. The homes had become hollow, and the spirits of the former residents were trapped within the walls, unable to escape. Terrified, Claire realized she was in grave danger. She was already on the entity's radar. The shadowy figures she had seen in the windows were no mere illusions. They were the trapped souls of those who had been absorbed. They were trying to communicate with her, trying to warn her, but Claire couldn't understand them. Yet, she could feel their presence, creeping in on her, watching her every move. She was next. Determined to escape, Claire sought the help of the few remaining neighbors, but they were no use. They had already succumbed to the curse, their minds twisted by the dark force that controlled the neighborhood. It was then that Claire learned the truth. The entity had been waiting for her, watching her since she first moved in. It had chosen her, just as it had chosen everyone before her. The ritual was almost complete. Once it was finished, Claire would become another soul, another lost spirit in the growing collection. In a desperate attempt to save herself, Claire tried to flee the neighborhood, but as she reached the end of the street, she found herself paralyzed, unable to move. The entity had a grip on her, pulling her back, dragging her toward her inevitable fate. She turned, one last time, to look at the empty houses around her. But they weren't empty anymore. They were watching her, their darkened windows filled with countless souls, all staring at her with empty eyes. Claire was trapped. Once you moved in, you never left. Clickbait. My neighbors vanished, and what I found will haunt you forever. This is a true story. Emily had never been one to believe in the supernatural. A practical woman, she lived a simple life with a steady job and a tight-knit circle of friends. Her days were filled with routine, and nothing ever seemed out of the ordinary. But that all changed the day she visited a yard sale down the street from her apartment. As she wandered past tables full of knickknacks and old furniture, something caught her eye. A delicate antique doll, sitting on a dusty shelf at the back of the yard. Its porcelain face was cracked in several places, giving it an eerie, almost lifelike appearance. The doll's eyes were dark and cold, but there was something strangely captivating about it. Emily, having recently become an aunt, thought it would make the perfect gift for her niece, Lily, who adored collecting vintage toys. She didn't think twice before buying it. The seller, a frail old woman, had warned her, but Emily wasn't paying attention. "That doll has a history," the woman muttered, her voice barely audible. "Keep it close, or it may find its way back to where it belongs." Emily chuckled at the strange comment and took the doll home, eager to present it to her niece the next time she visited. She placed the doll in a decorative box and set it on her bookshelf. But what she didn't know was that the doll was already beginning to stir, its dark eyes following her every move. At first, the strange occurrences were subtle. Emily would leave the doll on her bookshelf in one room and return to find it a few inches to the left. She shrugged it off as a figment of her imagination, perhaps just a draft or her own forgetfulness. But then, things began to escalate. One morning, Emily woke up to find the doll had moved from the shelf and was sitting on the floor in the hallway, as if waiting for her. Her heart skipped a beat, but she dismissed it again, probably just the wind. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Days went by, and the occurrences continued. Emily would put the doll in one room, only to find it in another later that day. Her belongings started to go missing: keys, pens, her favorite scarf. Sometimes she would hear faint whispers, like soft murmurs in the background, though no one else was around. At night, she would wake up to the sound of something scraping against the floor. Every time she went to investigate, nothing was ever there. The whispers grew louder. The air in her apartment felt colder, heavier, as if something, or someone, was watching her every move. The doll, once a seemingly innocent gift, now felt like a sinister presence. And then, one night, it happened. Emily had just finished cleaning the living room when she turned to find the doll sitting upright on the couch. She froze, her heart racing. No matter how many times she tried to rationalize it, she couldn't ignore the truth anymore. The doll was alive. In a panic, she gathered her things and rushed out to the nearest donation center. She was determined to get rid of the cursed doll once and for all. She handed it over to the volunteer at the counter, feeling a brief moment of relief. The doll would never make its way back to her again. Or so she thought. The next morning, Emily stepped out of her apartment to find the doll sitting on her doorstep. It was exactly where she had left it, its cracked porcelain face staring up at her, as if it had never left. She froze, her body trembling with dread. How had it come back? She had left it miles away, and yet it was right here, waiting for her. Terrified, Emily did the only thing she could think of. She packed the doll up again and drove it to a nearby town, leaving it in a completely different donation center. This time, she locked her doors and didn't even look back. But once again, the doll appeared on her doorstep the very next day. No matter what she did, whether she buried it, left it at the police station, or even dropped it into a river, the cursed doll always returned. And with each return, it looked more and more unsettling. Its eyes grew darker, its mouth twisted into an eerie smile, and its body seemed to become more lifelike, as though the doll was slowly becoming something more. As days turned into weeks, Emily's once calm and organized life spiraled into chaos. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't focus. And no matter where she went, the whispers followed her, like a dark cloud hovering just above her head. She started to lose track of time. Everything felt hazy, and the doll, always there, always watching, was the only thing that seemed constant. It was late one night when she finally heard the voice. A soft, whispery sound, like a faint hiss, coming from the direction of the doll. Emily was paralyzed with fear, unable to move, unable to breathe. The doll's porcelain mouth twisted, and to her shock, words began to spill out. "Emily," it said, its voice dripping with malice. "You are the chosen one." Her heart raced as she struggled to understand what was happening. The doll continued, its voice growing clearer. "You took me. You brought me home. And now, I need your soul. The curse is complete. You are mine." Emily's knees buckled, and she collapsed to the floor in front of the doll. Her mind was spinning, her thoughts a whirlwind of terror. What had she done? How could she undo this? She had been so naive, so blind to the warning signs. The curse tied to the doll's original owner was real, and now she was its next victim. The doll smiled wider, its eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "No matter where you go, no matter what you do, you will never be free. I will always find you. Your soul is mine to take." Emily, desperate to break free, tried one last thing. She grabbed the doll and threw it in the fireplace, hoping the flames would destroy it once and for all. But as the fire roared to life, she heard a soft giggle from the shadows. The doll was gone, vanished before the fire could touch it, and the whispers, they continued to echo in her mind, louder and louder, until they consumed her completely. Now, Emily's apartment is abandoned, her once peaceful home, now a hollow shell. No one knows where she went or what happened to her. Some say they still hear the whispers at night, faint cries for help, coming from the very building she once called home. But the doll? It's still out there, waiting for the next person to take it home.